The Multimedia Ninja Podcast, Episode 43. Hello again, and welcome to the Multimedia Ninja Podcast, where it's all about surviving and thriving in the digital convergence. My name is Bradford Rogers, and I'll be interviewing some multimedia ninjas who are making things happen in their respective fields, and sharing tips, tools, and insights for multimedia artists and content creators. As always, you can find show notes at themultimedianinja.com. This week, Grammy-winning engineer and producer Matt Still joins us again. As you may know, in this podcast series, my friends and I will be talking about all things multimedia, including creativity, shaping your ideas, and how to be more productive doing it, regardless of what kind of content you're creating. We have got an exciting episode for you today, so what do you say we just let's get to it? Hello there, and thank you for joining us for another week of the Multimedia Ninja Podcast. I'm glad you could make it again. We have Mr. Matt Still back for us this week to continue right where we left off on themultimedianinja.com, which is where you can find us. Don't forget you can subscribe very easily right there with the, wait for it, subscribe button, which will take you right to what you need to do for iTunes, your iPhone, your Android, whatever. And we have the video link for each episode as well. I would love for you to check it out. You can also subscribe to the Multimedia channel on YouTube. And I very much thank you for your comments, your thumbs ups, and your ratings on iTunes and all that good stuff. We appreciate you. So last week we were talking with Grammy-winning producer and engineer Mr. Matt Still, who works with a few people like Elton and Outkast and all sorts of things, as well as being a multimedia ninja with the DSLR photography and videography in his rapidly diminishing spare time. And so if you don't mind, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome back Mr. Matt Still. How's it going, sir?
It's going great.
I did the short tag this time. Bam! So good to have you virtually back. It's been
good to virtually be back.
Yes, long time since I've seen you.
Yes.
But anyway, we were talking DSLR photography and videography, and you have the Canon 5D Mark III.
Yes.
Jealous.
They're about to come out with the Mark IV.
Oh man. And what price will that be? Do you know?
More than I can afford right now.
Right.
So, I bought the 5D Mark III, I think, a little over a year ago. So that's gonna hold me for a while.
Yeah. And it, like one thing, it is similar to my 6D, although yours has a compact flash card, which would enable you to shoot raw images with the Magic Lantern add-on hack. Mine has an SD card. It won't push the data out to that sucker fast enough. So it's like, no. Anyway, but one thing they do have in common, they are both full frame sensors.
Yes.
So we've talked about this before. There are some people have like the 70, the 70D are very similar but have a smaller sensor, which I'm not saying that in any pejorative sense necessarily. But the fact is, when you have a smaller sensor than the full frame, your camera actually acts effectively like more telephoto and less wide angle. So your 35 millimeter lens is going to act like a 50 or some thereabouts, and which is fine if you want more telephoto, and not as fine if you want more wide angle. But it just is a thing that is what it is, and you have to choose your lenses accordingly. So I figured I'd bring that up again.
And low light situations.
Yes, that is true.
Like I mentioned the last time that I started off on a T2i.
Yes, which I didn't know what that is. What the model is.
Well, yeah, that's like I think it's also like the 550D is the model number, I think, overseas, but it's the T2i here in the States.
Okay.
And it's a 2/3 crop frame 2/3 sensor, so it's not a full frame. So like you said, if I'm using my 50 millimeter lens, it's actually shooting at around 80 millimeters.
Gotcha.
Is the effective focal length. But also in low light, it does not handle as well. So if I bump up the ISO, anything over ISO 800, I start to get a lot of noise and things like that. So I would have to get creative with my lens selection. I might have to go to a prime lens where I could get my aperture all the way down to like the 1.8 with the $50 lens we were talking about last week, or the. There you go. I think you missed your button there. There we go.
I was thinking, no.
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
So, in lower light situations, I might have to go to my primes where I could get my lens a little bit more wide open with the aperture.
Right.
Outdoors, it shot amazing. You could shoot a T2i right next to a 5D Mark III and have great looking shots from both. I've seen comparisons of people from professional photographers who actually know what they're doing, unlike myself.
Oh, come on now.
Where they would compare a shot of a T2i versus a 5D Mark III outdoors, and they were virtually identical. There were very small, very slight differences, between the two. But it's when you got into the low light situation that the 5D Mark III just really shined.
Right.
And I'd learned enough about photography and started to kind of do some things indoors where I was like noticing the effects of the low light and the noise that I was getting from having to bump up the ISO. So I went ahead and went all in for the 5D Mark III with the full frame, and it's just an amazing camera.
Yes. I actually have shot out in the Gulf of Mexico before dawn. With the Canon 6D, and it wasn't, it's just barely a hint of light on the bottom of the clouds, and you still see stars.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, it wasn't 100% awesome because, you're moving and stuff, but the fact that it would do anything remotely like that was just blew me away. I was very impressed with that, but I guess I really want the 1D or something like that, or but we always want something more.
Yes.
Right now I just got these little Sony AX33s that I'm very happy with for the podcast. That's my splurge for right now, which the two of them together might get you a half of the new 5D Mark IV, I imagine. But hey, it is what it is. You got to use what you got. Anyway, I don't know why I did that, but let's talk. I neglected to say on the audio tip, you didn't just win stuff and do stuff in the past. What are you doing right now in your audio?
Recently I mixed a few records for some local artists here in Atlanta. There's one artist named Gwen Hughes, which I believe you are familiar with. Mixed a lot of her latest record. I mixed the last record for Diane Durrett. She's a great blues and soul artist here out of Atlanta. I'm about to start a new project with Elton John next month. I'm heading over to London. He's going to start writing songs for a new animated movie. So
definite applause there.
So that's the next big project that I have going on.
Okay, so you have to go to London.
I have to go to London. Yes.
I assume you've been before.
Yes, many times. Yes.
What's your favorite thing with going there? That's an area one country I have not really visited. With all the travel that I get to do with him, it's a lot of fun going and working all these different studios. And people will always ask me, "Oh, I'm going to London. What's a great restaurant to go to? Where should I go shopping?" I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know anything about the area because when I go there, I'm working or I'm sleeping, and that's it. I wake up, I get to the studio about 10 a.m., and I leave between 2 and 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And that's
other than the strip clubs, of course.
Oh, yeah. But
no, I've never been to one myself.
Of course not.
So you don't get out of the studio much?
No, because we have a lot of work to do, and we're not there to party, and I'm not there to mess around. So there's a lot to get done. So I don't know a whole lot about the city other than their studios.
So presumably artists like Elton are that's probably a good example because there are certain artists that are like wanting to write at 3 and 4 in the morning, but I gather he's probably taken off a little earlier in the day. And then so what does the rest of your day look like task-wise to try in between if I'm on the right track there?
Yeah, well, like the normal daily schedule would be like, I would get in around 10 o'clock. and he gets in around noon, between 11:30 and noon. He is painfully prompt and usually early. So if he says he'll be there at noon, you better be ready at 11:30 because from 11:30, between 11:30 and noon, he could walk in at any time. But
Nice.
so he'll get in, like I said, between 11:30 and noon, and then he'll start writing a song, and he'll be there until probably 6 or 7 o'clock at night. But it usually takes him around 30 minutes-ish to write a song, and then we start working with the band and figuring out some, transitions, how we're going to get into the song, how we're going to end the song, and then we start getting takes with the band.
Okay.
And then we'll start overdubbing with, guitars and do any little bass fixes that we need to do. Start working on some keyboards with Kim Bullard, who is his keyboardist, who is an alum of Lakeside High School.
All right. In our neighborhood.
Yes, right here in the hood.
Awesome.
And he'll leave about 6 o'clock, 6 or 7, and then I'll just continue doing overdubs, and we'll get to some background vocals, additional guitar overdubs, extra keyboard overdubs, and then I start mixing.
Okay.
And I'll have a rough mix ready for him by the next day.
Okay.
So he can kind of listen to everything and see if he wants to make any changes to what we did, or if there's any additional stuff, any additional ideas that he has. We'll finish that off, and then once we do all that in the morning, he'll start writing the next song, and then we start the whole process over.
Okay.
Again.
So if you're doing a rough mix in like Abbey Road Studio or something, are you still doing in the box, just going through a console? Or
I'm still in the box because I need to be able to pull that mix up. Because when I get back to my studio here in Atlanta, I will mix. I will do the final mixes here, and I need to be able to pull up the mix just exactly the way we had it in Abbey Road or wherever we're working over there. And so I'm always working inside the box.
So you basically using the console pre's and stuff coming in, and then it's kind of in the box from there on?
Sometimes I use the console pre's, sometimes I use external pre's, and it varies on what I'm recording as to what mic pre I want to use.
Gotcha.
So,
and and what's your interface? Do you take one with for Pro Tools or use?
In my home studio, I have a couple of different converters that I use for various things. I have in my desktop at home, I have Apogee converters.
Yes, sir.
With my laptop, I have an Apollo system.
Oh, I like that one as well.
Yeah,
I'll give
I
them
have an
one.
Apollo 16 and it has an Apollo 16 and an Apollo Twin Duo on the front end for that, so I can just have a nice little monitor section there. But when we're in the studios, it's maybe sacrilege, but I'm kind of flexible when it comes to...
Just get it in there. And
let's just get it in there, because I don't want to get caught up on too much of the gear, because all the gear in the world, all the plugins in the world don't make the difference. That's not going to be the difference between a hit or a bust. It all comes down to the song. And let me just keep him in the creative space and let me keep the band rolling to where they're working at their peak performance and getting the most creative. And that's what I'm worried about most of all. Words to live by.
Do you carry anything around as far as like files, like setup files or preference files or anything to go from studio to studio? Or
nope.
Oh, good. That makes that answer easy.
Yep. Well, a lot of people work with templates and presets and that kind of stuff. And now before we start a session, like with this new session with Elton, when I go in, we'll get everybody set up, and I'll get my inputs all routed to where I want them to go. And I'll create a template for that session in terms of all the inputs routing and Elton's piano set up exactly the way I like it, the way I know that he likes it. And, when we start a new song, I'll just import those tracks, and that way everything just kind of sets up the same from song to song.
Right.
But when I'm mixing, I kind of clear out a lot of stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Because I don't like to start with presets. I don't pull up necessarily the same reverb or the same delay or whatever, because I like to treat each song individually and make the decision on what reverb or delay or chorus, or EQ or compressor that I'm going to use based on that song.
Right.
They all have different tones and different sounds and different characteristics. And I feel like if you constantly use templates, then you become predictable in your sound.
Right.
And there's something that becomes, you become too, it's expected of you to
Right.
have a specific sound, rather than trying to keep it fresh and have an unexpected thing happen in your mix.
Right. Oh, we can't have anything unexpected going on, or
God
creative.
forbid.
Yeah.
Yes. So I don't like to use templates because I feel like I'm at that point I've stopped thinking about the song.
Right.
And I'm thinking about trying to get quicker with
Right.
with my workflow, which there's valid reasons to want to be quick,
Right.
but not to the point where it's the detriment of the song.
Sure. So we kind of got into this at the NARUP panel when with Billy Hume and you, and
Okay.
both of whom outrank me in musically, to be sure. And I was about to give my tip on use templates, and then one of you guys busted out with whatever you do, don't use templates. But I think what we were all getting at is, and again, I was hesitant to opine at all, but I'm thinking more in terms of like what you do at the beginning of the session to facilitate the idea laying down thing and not be fiddling with I/O and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But not so much on the back end where you're trying to take that and not going, okay, well, this is going to be the vocal chain and this is going to be the whatever. And, but just to get things rolling and stuff is my preference. Like on Ableton, I'll have, if I'm just writing, I'll have like a, here's a keys, bass, drums kind of thing just to kind of get me going. And then when we do the real thing, then we'll kind of mangle that entirely.
And with stuff like that, I don't see any problem with that.
Yeah.
It's when you get into pulling up a channel that has, the same plugins on your vocal chain, and you always have the same.
Right.
And some people even already have the EQ dialed in.
We could name names, but
And I'm like, well, how do you know that EQ curve is going to work on this particular channel? It's going to change the tone, and you've stopped thinking, and you've just kind of moved on.
Might as well get the machine that goes ping.
I do set up a template in the beginning of our sessions, especially if I have like a big live setup with a full band. That way when we start a new song, I can just pull that in, and all my IOs are routed, and all my headphone mixes are routed, and everything is set up for them to just kind of instantly move into the next song.
And by session here, you mean like a multi-day thing where the band is set up a certain way in a certain studio, or am I?
Yeah.
So,
like we'll be in the studio for 2 weeks with Elton or something, and he's got 5 or 6 songs to write, and I'll go ahead and create a little template. The day before he gets in, we're getting all set up, and I'll set all my IOs, and I'll get everything routed the way I want it to go. I'll get it set up on the desktop, everything grouped together the way I want. I'll get my group set up. I'll get my reverb sends and returns, and just something for them to track to. And that's what I'll use as a template when we're tracking, so I can just use that with each song.
Right.
Now, when it comes to mixing, like I said,
when
I start my mixes, I delete it. Even if I think I'm going to pull back in the exact same reverb, I delete it anyway, so that I have to start my mind. I have to start my mind over from scratch with that song.
Right.
So
I like that. Yeah. Help the tracking. Don't Xerox the mixing.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
And I just now realized that you've been describing this. I mean, I've talked to you over the last couple of years on what you're doing in some of these sessions. And in general, I totally didn't realize, wasn't thinking about the band being there while Elton's writing.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's that.
Yes.
I was thinking, piano, Matt, and then later on they're coming in and doing whatever. But
no,
they're hanging there, ready to.
They're hanging there, and he writes the song, and then they start working out. Like I said, they'll work out the intro, and if there's a few transitions, where they want the drums to come in or out, or and how they're going to get out of the song.
So one day, one song. It's pretty much
That's pretty much it, and we might, depending on the song, we might go, a little bit longer. But he writes so quickly, and they're all just amazing musicians. So it's
I didn't want.
The goal.
Yeah, I didn't want to hang on Elton like repetitively, redundantly more than once over and over. But he is a craftsman and a meticulous and very professional one, so I think there's a lot to be gleaned from the whole process.
And I know the word genius gets thrown out a lot, but he is a musical genius. I mean, he is unlike any other artist that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of artists. So
yeah.
you know, he's
Thumbs up.
he's in a league of his own.
And I should ask you too. You don't have to name names, but what sort of methodology have you worked with that was diametrically opposed to what you just described? I'm sure there's some, there are guys that like, come in there at 3 a.m, crank it up as loud as they can, fire up enough blunts to.
Yeah. I've had plenty of those sessions. Each artist is different, and you've got to, as a producer, you've got to kind of learn how to work within what makes that artist tick. Some artists like Elton, I feel like my job is to be as transparent as possible and just to kind of get out of the way and make sure that everything gets done in a timely fashion, make sure that the session runs smoothly, and just get what Elton hears in his head out.
And
not
don't
what I
get up.
Yeah, exactly. Don't get what's in my head out, get what's in his head out.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some artists that you'll work with that you've got to kind of give them a kick in the ass to get them to get to that space. And sometimes you got to kind of, poke the guys in the band to almost get into a fight with one another because they don't play their best unless they're angry at each other.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
So you've got to learn the artist and kind of what makes them tick and what's going to get them in the right creative space. Now, as just an engineer, I've worked with some artists that, say, okay, yeah, we're going to come in at 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. I'm still sitting there watching TV waiting for them to show up, and then they go to the club and I get a phone call, oh yeah, we're on the way, and then midnight they finally show up, and then it is just crank it up as loud as you can go, and it's kind of turns into a party.
Right.
So, but that's their workflow. That's what gets them in their creative space, and if that's what they need to do, then hey, I'm all for it, because it's all about the end product. So if you need to go out to the club and party and kind of get your head in a certain spot, and then you're like, okay, now let's go to the studio and let's kind of take this off to the studio and crank it up, and then hey, I'm all for it. So it's a different workflow for every artist, and you've just got to be basically prepared for anything.
And I don't mean to pick on firing up a blunt or anything.
Yeah.
That's just, and no matter what genre, whether it's something closer to that workflow or Elton or, names aside, that was my whole point on this next question, was to forget any names at all. Is there any cases in any genre where you've found yourself doing uncredited assistance to the actual performances or production that went way beyond what say if you were as an engineer or something, and all of a sudden it's like, well, this thing here really needs a thing here. Is there a keyboardist in the house, or were you, just totally had to go above the job description? I'm assuming yes, but
yeah, I mean, at times you'll do stuff, and I've been known to pull out an instrument or two, a keyboard, and, do some things that I hear. And then when the artist gets in to listen to stuff, usually I'll play it without what I did. And then I'll say, hey, I had this idea, see what you think of this. And then I'll throw the track in. And a lot of times they've been, man, that's awesome. Leave it in there. That's cool. Great. And sometimes like, nah, I don't like that. Let's leave it out. So, yes, I've done that before. And sometimes it's made its way in, and sometimes it's been axed.
Have you got any vintage or favorite keyboards, given that you're doing a lot of engineering, or is there anything you keep around for certain things at your studio, or that you request when you go places, or just to have around in case somebody wants it because you're like, this keyboard is so freaking cool
Well, like, not to get back to Elton, but he's the one that I work with that we use a lot of live instruments with.
Right.
I always like to have a real Hammond around.
Yes.
A lot of other keyboards have really nice modeling samples that sound fantastic.
Right.
But
it's got the mojo.
Hammond, it's just that kind of crunch you get when you're pushing air through that Leslie that really sounds different to me. It has a different warmth and it has a different edge to it, and so I always love having just that live Hammond and getting that live performance down with with the keyboardist, because a lot of times, the Hammond track can be kind of dirty and a little messy at times. And when you have MIDI, you can go in there and make it pristine and perfect, and you kind of lose that live human feel to it when you do that. And you can, make your speed switch, exactly perfect where you want it, rather than it just kind of being in the moment. And it may, the keyboardist might flip the speed at an unexpected spot, and it just adds that extra little coolness to it.
Right.
So I always like to have a live Hammond when we're tracking.
Man, I love me some Hammond, and I was actually arrested one time for pushing air through a Leslie, but that's a whole nother story. Speaking of which, we teased it last time. We were at when we were at the NARUP panel. I think they asked about horror stories, and I thought I had the winner that time. With the fact I was in an old studio way back doing my first record, and which is actually mine, producing and artist. And God help you if you can find it, but it is on the Multimedia Ninja website. Easy for me to say. That would be Jihad, released in 1998. But anyway, I was in the studio recording that, and I reached down to grab my, what's probably a Motorola flip phone or something out of the cushion of the sofa, and I came up with a syringe. And I thought that was the story of the night, which it turns out, though, recently we caught you on, I think, the Atlanta Recording Community Board or something on Facebook, and you had a story that I'll just let you. It seemed to be a horror story that is both funnier and more disturbing than mine, perhaps. Yeah.
I was working at a studio, and they had an intern, and the studio and intern will remain nameless. He had the uncontrollable urge to pleasure himself in the bathroom.
Oh dear, that's not good.
And it wasn't, and it was not a private bathroom. I mean, there were several stalls, and so more than one person would be in there at a time at any given time. And one time I walked in, and I guess he didn't notice that I walked in, and I could hear him in the middle of the act.
That's not good.
And yep. So I go out, and I get with the studio manager, and I'm like, listen, your boy's in there, kind of doing something inappropriate. Yes. And I'm cool with it, whatever. But some clients might not, dig
may frown upon this.
Yeah,
practice.
They may frown upon this. And the thing was, they said, we talked to him about this. So it was apparently an ongoing situation, and they knew about it, and they had talked to him about it, and apparently he could not control himself. But that was actually the last time I ever saw him. So I guess he was, they finally said, okay, you obviously have some sort of issue going on, so you need to just go take care of that, and
15 times and you're out of here.
Yeah, have a nice life. So
wow.
I posted on the Atlanta Recording Community. I said, one useful tip for interns, don't masturbate in the bathroom.
Yes, that one gets the award. Now, for useful tips for interns, what would you recommend here's a segue, as a pathway if they're interested in engineering?
Don't be picky about what sessions you take. Take every session that comes your way. I can't tell you how many panels I've gone to. It says, I want to be a rock producer, and how do I find more rock? I'm like, dude, just engineer what's available to you. Engineer anything. If something needs to be recorded, put yourself out there as the guy or the girl who wants to record this. Whether it's rap, jazz, country, rock, hip hop, classical, whatever, just record anything that's being recorded.
Right.
When I was in bands, I was in rock bands, I was always into rock music. That's what I wanted to produce. That's what I wanted to record. But when I got into the studio, it was hip hop and R&B. And that's what was available to me. And I was like, well, if I sit around here and wait for the rock bands to come in, I'm never going to get behind that console and record anything. So you know what? Hip hop it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's where I started, and I've expanded, and I have done rock and jazz and R&B and, you know, other live musicians. So, you know, work on any and every session that you can just to gain experience.
Nice. Words to live by. And are there any mistakes that you find frequently, or the ones that bug you the most in new engineers, whether it's maybe when they're getting in their first commercial setting or just in general, or what biggest engineering mistake would you say that new folks should studiously avoid?
A new mistake as an engineer, not quite sure. You know, that's not sure where to go with that.
Don't blow up the studio monitors.
Don't blow up the studio monitors. Don't F up.
Yes.
You know, as an intern, or as an assistant engineer, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if there's someone who's going to be my assistant engineer, what I want them to do is to be there to anticipate my needs, to kind of be thinking ahead of me,
right,
and already know where I'm going and what I need.
Mm-hmm.
Because the best assistants that I've had, as soon as I need this, they're already out the door getting it,
mm-hmm,
or they're coming back in the door with it because they knew that's where I was headed.
right.
You know, there was one assistant at a studio that every time I turned around to ask him for something, he was online playing Texas Hold'em poker.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, can we go get a U87 hooked up? He's like, oh yeah, hold on.
Wow.
And he was in the middle of a game, and he was like, it was real money. It wasn't a play game. He was back there betting real money. And I was
guess
like,
that's better. I don't know.
Well, it made him where he didn't want to leave the game.
Okay.
So I was like, listen, you need to just
pick one. Work
I took
plan
him
or
aside and
another.
said, listen, you need to just figure out what you want to do. Do you want to play poker? Or do you want to be on this session? Because you can't
Right.
do both. I said, I need you there with me, because I can't sit around and explain to you what I just told Elton or the band or whoever it is that I'm recording.
Right.
You know, you need to be listening to what I'm saying to them and figuring out where I'm going and kind of anticipate my needs and be on top of things.
Hang on, I think I got a flush.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Uh-oh. So, as an assistant engineer, anticipate the engineer's needs.
Nice. I like that one. That's a good one. And I don't want to detain you too long, but I should ask, where should people find you?
They can go to my website at mattstill.net.
.net. Yes.
.net.
Okay. And it is a fine website.
Thank you.
I've been there many, many times because I knew it was .net and not .com.
There you go.
It's .net. You're also on the Twitter is it just
at Matt Still? Yeah.
no underscores or nothing?
No
right?
underscores or nothing.
And ditto on Instagram?
Yes.
Awesome. And the Facebook and all that?
I'm on Facebook, yeah. Just Matt Still.
Cool. But you only take certain kind of gigs. The ones that pay.
The ones that pay.
And
Well,
don't suck.
Hey, yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to finance your dreams.
Right.
So you've got to have skin in the game besides just your dream.
Right.
Now, I have had some people that I've come across where it's like, damn, this is really effing cool.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be a part of this. And I've thrown my time in to do it. But those were things that I felt were slam dunks.
Right.
Or just really so cool that I just wanted to be a part of it.
Right.
If it's outside of that, yeah, it's, there's got to be, you've got to have some skin in the game. So I don't finance people's dreams.
Gotcha. And I totally forgot, this is a different note, but I had a note to mention you are looking much more svelte than you have been in some time.
As are you.
Yes, we have.
We have both lost about a person together.
Yes, in
there
fact,
would be three of us here, but now there's only two.
We have each lost more than this.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. So,
yes.
And you've been doing it, besides counting the calories, I assume, by yoga.
Yes. I have found yoga.
I won't outro too long on that, but
Yeah.
what kind and how have you found that to be?
I go to a studio here in town called Infinity Yoga.
Okay.
And they do a lot of different yoga types, but it's mainly Ashtanga is probably my primary practice, but I also do some Vinyasa flow
Okay.
and also some Yin yoga.
Okay.
So I have found that I love the discipline. I love, the mind and body experience with yoga, and I do it every single day.
Nice. I was just about to get into the gymnastic bodies mobility thing, which is not exactly related, but involves stretching and just totally point to hamstring. So the whole workout thing has come to a screeching halt.
Like I said, I've lost quite a bit of weight so far. I'm not done. I've still got more to go. But people are always saying, "Oh yeah, I guess I should do yoga." And I'm like, "Well, that's not what I'm telling you. I'm not saying you should go do yoga. Yoga's worked for me, and yoga's right for me. Just get out there and move and sweat and do something. Get active.
Right.
Whatever works. Find what works for you and do that."
I love it's in the new rules of lifting for men. One of their rules was doing something is better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I think we said over a beverage recently or you said, and I concur if you did say it, and if you didn't say it, I just hallucinated that you did. But that was
if it's good, I'll take credit for it.
Almost any reasonable diet works, at least for some period of time, if you adhere to it.
Yes.
So, people can quibble over, oh no, you got to do this, no, you got to do that.
You got to do paleo, you got to do no carb, you got to do whatever, you got to do vegan. It's like
just do something.
Yeah, do something. If you're cognizant of what you're putting into your body, and you take note of it, the portion size, the calories. I gave myself a couple of simple rules. I didn't do any sort of paleo, no carb thing.
Right.
I cut out fast food.
Right.
I haven't had any fast food for over 5 months now.
Nice.
And I don't snack. No snacking in between meals.
Gotcha.
So I only do 3 meals a day. I don't do the 4 to 6 meals a day. Like some people say every 4 hours you should eat just small amounts. Well, when I'm in the studio and I've got things going,
it's not practical.
That's not practical for me. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stick to the 3 meals a day, but I'm not going to eat all this crap in between that I used to do. I'm not going to be sipping on a soda. Or I'm not going to be eating potato chips in between or some crackers or whatever. Yeah. Chips and salsa, man. Yeah. That's my weakness right there.
The potato ones are my weakness.
Yeah. So
carbs and fat all in one nice package.
Yes. So yeah, I don't snack, no fast food. I do yoga every day. And some people say, well, yoga, how can you, I've done yoga and, you're just stretching. And I'm like, well, you're not
doing the kind I'm
not doing the real yoga. You're
right.
doing sleepy time yoga.
Yeah.
When in the Ashtanga and the Vinyasa flow classes that I'm in, you're pouring sweat off.
And tabling and all kind of stuff.
The sweat is pouring off of you. So you will definitely burn some calories if you take a true Ashtanga class.
I may have to do that as soon as I can.
Get you in there with me.
Yeah, I'll have to have a remedial course first. However, I will be seeing you in a couple of days.
Yes.
And speaking of food, I'm going to go have some in a minute. But much appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we will have to have you back as soon as we can.
Anytime.
As soon as you can. And in the meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen of the virtual studio audience, please give it up for Mr. Matt Still. Thanks for coming by, sir.
Thanks for having me here.
Well, that just about wraps up another edition of The Multimedia Ninja. I hope you'll come back next week and bring your friends. Don't forget you can subscribe to the Multimedia Ninja podcast at themultimedianinja.com using the subscribe button of all things. I want to thank everyone again who has commented, fed back, left stars, thumbs up on YouTube, iTunes, website, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. Wouldn't be here without you. I want you to have a great creative week and do something special for those around you. Sign off.